VoiceEvalU8 involves three pieces: an app that will run on your client's smartphone or tablet, a server that analyzes the data, houses the data, which happens to also be HIPAA compliant, and the VoiceEvalU8 web portal that the clinician accesses. The client does not, just the clinician. So right now we're looking at the web portal. Everything on the left is kind of your navigation tab. The first two tabs are really important. This is where you would add your app users to the tab. You have the option of using names or initials or numbers. If you are using initials or numbers, each column must be completed. So for example, we're looking at subject 14 or subject 15. If you're starting with 1, it would be 01, 02, up to 09 client, and then that next client would be 10, etc. You need to enter their email address. It must be a legitimate email address, because if they forget the password and when they log into the app on their device, they'll be able to reset it through their email. And then you just keep reading and indicating each of the columns and the ones that apply. If they don't apply, then you'll say not applicable. If you need to select multiple options, if you're using a Mac, you hold the command button down and select multiple. If you're using a Windows-based computer, you hold control button down and select multiple. Scan all the way to the end. And the user has two options. They can be approved or denied. Somebody who is approved means that they will get the logs and complete the logs. Somebody who is denied will not. So you can update their status, or if they are somebody new, then you would add them. So that's kind of the first thing you have to do. Second thing you have to do is create the logs. So you see I have some logs examples here already in here. So you would name it. When you name it, please do not put your client's name in a log. It must be a name for the log session. For example, I typically name it by the date, and if it's pre-therapy, I usually call it pre-date, whether it's AM or PM for the log name. If it's during therapy, I might say during therapy and then have the date. Then you'll select the date, the start and end times of that log session. So this is the amount of time that your client has to complete it. So that means the logs will run from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. and they will get reminders, push notifications, and email reminders to complete the logs, either every 30 minutes or every 60 minutes. Then you will click Add to add the log. And then once you've added it, you have to add the questions. So you would select all the questions from the category that you want. So here's an example of a log just doing the Singing Voice Handicap Index. Notice that each question is numbered. They must all have a different number, and you must update each one. Then once you get a log to where you like it, then you can duplicate it. So if you duplicate it, it'll save you some time. And I would probably change the name if you want to change the date. If you want to change the start and end time, maybe change it to an AM session, then you would click Update. If you don't want to look at rows and rows of these logs, then what you can do is disable a log. And you'll see that it's gone. If you want to show all of your logs, select Show All. And you'll see that this one is the one we just disabled. If you want to re-enable it, click Enable. And now you'll be able to see it. So that's kind of a nice function to kind of give the clinician a break from all those rows. Then when we get past text reports, so these are all of the questions in the app that require the client to answer questions. So we have perceptual scales, we have the vocal fatigue index, we have the VHI 30 and 10, we have the reflux symptom index, and we have the transgender male to female questionnaire. We've also recently added the Singing Voice Handicap Index 10 and 36, the Perceived Stress Scale, the Evaluation of Ability to Sing Easily, and the Pediatric Voice Handicap Index. Then I have additional tabs here that allow you to graph the primary and perceptions questions. The perceptions questions are based off of the KV, but the client completes, so you can graph them. You can look at the results over days or as a grand mean. Then we get into audio reports. So this is where the client is recording their voice within the app. So you can look at acoustic measures, which include fundamental frequency, standard deviation of FO, jitter percent, shimmer percent, noise to harmonic ratio, cepstral peak prominence, the smooth cepstral peak prominence, and the AVQI. And you can also graph those. And then we have the aerodynamic measures of S to Z and maximum phonation time. Down here we have tabs where you can access training videos. Whoops. So you can watch these videos to learn how to add or deny users, how to create logs, how to look at the generic text reports, how to look at all those summary text tabs that appear under the text reports. Same thing for audio. We have summary acoustic reports videos and a video for the aerodynamic reports. Then we get into educational resources. So you can read the policies and procedurals manual, an instruction sheet that you can give your user, a description of the questions and measures in the app with screenshots. So this kind of defines all of those questions. Here's what the primary questions are. Here's what the acoustic questions look like in the app. And also what the perceptual questions look like, again, based off of the CAPE V. And then an app template for 5 days. Here are some suggestions for how to create the logs. So the top has the S to Z and maximum phonation time alternating. The middle is just the S to Z and the bottom is just the maximum phonation time. So you'll see this is the order that would occur in day 1 AM. And you'll see that it has perceptual, acoustic, and aerodynamic questions within each day. If you're using this with students, because VoiceEvalU8 is an educational tool, it's a research tool, and it's a clinical tool, there are assignments here you might want to use with your students. If you're using this as a clinical tool, you'll see that I have additional sample voice evaluation reports with comments embedded and examples of data for me in a Word document. And then I've also given you a blank one if you want to use it for your own reports. And then I have a similar function for the reportive therapy when you want to document change from pre to post. I also have examples of how to use it with your clients and how to bill for it. So you can read through that. So this is kind of the lay of the land for the VoiceEvalU8 web portal. It's pretty intuitive, pretty easy to use once you start playing around with some of these tabs. Just something I want to share with you. This is relevant for newer Droid users. We found a recent glitch for newer Droids, not older Droids, but newer, with newer operating systems. So this is relevant for landscape view questions where you have to slide a box on a scale from 0 to 10 or 0 to 100. That really only impacts the primary questions and the perceptions questions. All their questions, it's not going to matter. But in that landscape view, they have to push this back button. So see the arrows pointing that out? They have to push the back button. When they push the back button, then they're able to see the question, and then they can proceed with the log. So that's something we just recently discovered that we will be fixing in the next couple months. Again, if they click the back button, they'll be okay, they can proceed. And it's really only happening with the primary and the perceptions questions. All other questions are fine. And then another thing we found is that for the newer Droids with newer operating systems, they are not getting push notifications to their device. They do get email alerts to complete the logs, but they're not getting push notifications. That's something else that we need to fix. Otherwise, everything else is okay with both iOS, with iPhones, and Droids. So VoiceEvalU8 is really relevant now, considering the current coronavirus pandemic of 2020, where we are supposed to practice physical distancing and we need to shelter in place in many areas. So you can't meet with your clients in person, but you can certainly continue with voice assessment. You can continue with voice assessment before you start working with them during your therapy to see if they're generalizing tasks, and then of course after to document change. So VoiceEvalU8 allows you to do that remotely. So you can do this through telepractice. You can train the client to use it through a video conferencing session, and then they go about their day and they can use the app for the next 5 days in the morning and in the evening. So it is really relevant now in the current status of kind of where we are with the pandemic. And so VoiceEvalU8 has a lot to offer. Thank you.